What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're taking a look at all of the new decks that Evolving Skies is adding to the Pokemon TCG 2020 to 2021 standard format of Team Up On. The Team Up through Evolving Skies format will be a very short-lived one, mostly played on PTCGO, but the Pokemon Online Global Championships 2021, an official World Championships-like event, will be played in this Team Up through Evolving Skies format, so I know a lot of players are interested in these decks. So today I'm going to take a brief look at about 30 different decks from Japan, because they have a very similar format to this over there currently, and talk about them and talk about my opinion on how much potential each of these decks have going into this pretty unique format. So if you're interested in all of that, stay tuned for the rest of the video. First, shout out to my sponsors, PotownStore.com, the best place to get PTCGO codes, and be sure to use code CELIO for 5% off over there when shopping for Pokemon TCG online code cards. Also, shout out to PokemonCard.io, where I share all of my standard format deck lists, and you can easily export them to PTCGO to try for yourself. The Team Up through Evolving Skies format is the current standard format with the addition of Evolving Skies. This format is unique because the standard format will experience a rotation on September 10th, just a couple weeks after Evolving Skies comes out. And so this will be a short-lived format, primarily played on Pokemon TCG Online. The Pokemon Online Global Championships, also known as POG 2021, will be played in this format the weekend of September 4th through 5th. You can sign up for this massive online tournament that will be free on play.limitlesstcg.com. I will leave a link for that in the description or comments. And before we get into the rest of the video, if you have any questions about anything I mention here, please feel free to leave it down in the comments, and I will try to get you the most helpful answer that I can. The lists in this video are from tournament results in Japan, and they are mostly going to be new decks that were not previously around before Evolving Skies. Japan's format at the time of these tournaments was slightly different. So Japan is missing a couple of cards since they rotated out when ours didn't. And they also have some cards that were new to them that we are not getting in Evolving Skies. To be on this list, the deck has to be somewhat capable of functioning and winning competitive matches. So even decks which I mark as having low potential still relatively have some amount of potential. High potential decks, I am rating them because I either want to play that deck or beat it, and I think it's very good if I give it high potential. Mid potential, something I would probably consider playing, but it has some noticeable weak points, or it's underwhelming compared to high potential decks. And then low potential decks, it works, it functions, it can win some games, but in my opinion, why would you play it over one of the inherently better decks? So this is the list of all of the decks we'll be looking at today. I will have a pictured deck list for each deck, and we'll briefly go over them, and I will also give my potential rating for them. If the deck has an asterisk next to it, it means it is an old archetype. It is a pre-existing archetype. It is not brand new with Evolving Skies, but I wanted to talk about it because it's either really, really important for the format, or it has notable new cards. Adventurer is a supporter card that is not yet released, but you will see it pictured in a couple deck lists that you see in this video. So just note that this is not going to be in the Evolving Skies set for North America, and it will not be a card that we are using at the time of the POG 2021 format. If you see a card that looks like it doesn't belong, that means it is 99% of the time that player's GX counter that is just pictured with their deck. So if you see a card like this, or an old Pokemon card, or even just a card that's thrown on top of the deck that doesn't look like it belongs there, it's probably just that player's GX counter that they're using. Let's start with ADPZ Suicune Moltres. ADPZ has been a strong deck for quite some time now, and the ADP Birds or ADPZ Moltres, whatever it is, that kind of surface with Chilling Rain is a very good deck as well. So here you just add Suicune to have another type coverage of water, but also it attacks for 2 energy, so sometimes it's just going to be a more efficient attacker than Zacian is. So I think this is a very high potential deck. This is something that I think is great for day one of Pog. Since, you know, day one of tournament, the general population of players, best of one games, faster games, you know, you just want to have a fast, consistent, aggressive deck, and that's everything that this deck should be. So in theory, I think this is a very, very good deck for this format. Next, we have Duraludon VMAX. Duraludon VMAX is a new card from Evolving Skies. And Duraludon VMAX has the ability Skyscraper, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon that have any special energy attached to them. And Gmax Pulverization does a good chunk of damage and goes through any effects. It is Dragon type, has no weakness, which is a plus. I think this deck is fine. A discernible weakness that I do think it has is that it has your stage 1 attacker and then your stage 1 support, which is Bronzong. And neither of them are drawing you cards or helping you get set up. Whereas we have a lot of other decks where their evolutions are drawing you cards or helping you get set up in some way. Like Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, it accelerates energy, it draws you cards. Eternatus VMAX gives you a wider board so you can play more support Pokemon. Urshifu Inteleon or any Inteleon based deck is playing the Drizzile Inteleon to help you get set up. So I think that little bit of clunkiness where you have these stage 1 lines that you do want to get set up, but they aren't actually progressing your game or helping you with consistently achieving your game plan, just leaves decks like this to be a little more clunky. But if it does get set up, not much is one-shotting Duraludon VMAX with the Sharrels around to heal and Bronzong to move the energy off and then back to it. And of course you have that base of Zacian and Zamazenta just being very strong cards as well. So I rank this at having mid potential for this format. I think Duraludon VMAX will have plenty of time to try to be good after the rotation, so personally I'm not too much in a rush to try to make Duraludon VMAX work for this format. Next is Eternatus VMAX Umbreon VMAX. So Eternatus VMAX gains Umbreon VMAX, which is a very good card. Umbreon VMAX is a dark Pokemon. It has the ability Dark Signal. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may switch one of your opponent's benched Pokemon with their active Pokemon. So this is essentially a free boss's orders upon evolution, and it is dark, so it just works so well with Eternatus VMAX since you can only have dark Pokemon in play when using Eternatus VMAX's ability. And so this takes up a bench spot, so you do more damage with Dread End, and it gusts. It has a different weakness than Eternatus VMAX as well. It shares the grass weakness with Galarian Moltres, so they can be alternate attackers in the event that you're playing against a fighting type deck. So Eternatus, of course, a pre-existing archetype well before Evolving Skies, but Umbreon VMAX, you see here this player slotted 7 cards to the Umbreon VMAX line in this deck. I do think it makes quite an impact on the Eternatus VMAX deck, and it'll probably make an impact on standard format for a couple of years to come, because these gust effects upon evolution are typically very, very good. Next, we have Flaffy Single Prizers. So I think this is a neat deck. I have it at low potential because if I've learned something in the past, maybe 1 to 2 years or so, just with the power level of the rulebox cards, typically when you're trying to play single prizer decks, and if they have an evolution line of single prizers, most of the time these single prizer decks just aren't going to work. And I feel like that has become pretty safe to say. Most of the time, single prize decks are just not going to cut it in the current environment. It's typically just going to be dominated by V and VMAX Pokemon. So just being skeptical, even though I love this deck, I love these toolbox kind of decks, especially with some spread damage that Regidrago and Zapdos provide. I have to be realistic and say it's probably low potential. I wouldn't want to play this over, you know, ADP Moltres or Eternatus VMAX or Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, some of the real best decks that are the best and most popular because they put up consistent results. It is a functioning deck. It could definitely squeak out some wins, but I think it has low potential. Next is Flareon VMAX, and all of the lists, or maybe I should say most of the lists I've seen from Japan are greens exploration-based builds with Flareon VMAX, and this list plays 29 energy. So my initial gripe with this deck, or the way that Flareon VMAX decks are being built, and probably the only way they can be built because Flareon VMAX is a very, very linear card, they just seem so inconsistent because just about half of your deck is energy, and that doesn't seem very, very good to me. And your only attacker is Flareon VMAX, which takes 3 energy or 2 energy with Elemental Badge to attack. So typically your opponent's just going to have to knock out 2 Pokemon to win the game. Now, of course, Max Explosion has some incredible potential. It can do 500 damage. You discard the top 5 cards of your deck and it does 100 for each energy you discard it. So it does have really great potential. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, you know, some of these higher tiered decks that or at least decks that I have, in my opinion, at higher tiers or having higher potential. They could definitely lose a game or two to Flareon VMAX, but in the long run, I don't think Flareon VMAX can actually take down a tournament or probably even top cut a major event. Although I do think it can get some wins against other competitive decks on games where it's working how it's supposed to. I don't think it will consistently be able to achieve that game plan and perform above average. So that's why I have it down here at low potential. Next is Jolteon VMAX Dragapult. So Jolteon VMAX Dragapult, we've seen a deck somewhat like this, Dragapult Urshifu VMAX, Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, and I'd say Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX is a better card than Jolteon VMAX, and potentially even has more synergy with Dragapult because Urshifu takes care of a lot of dark types, which knocks out Dragapult VMAX in one hit just about all the time. So here I think we're combining 2 very cool VMAXs. They both spread damage. They both have low energy costs. Jolteon can attack for just 1 energy. Dragapult attacks for 2 energy. And I do love both of these VMAX Pokemon, but I don't think they necessarily need to be in the same deck together. I think a straight Dragapult deck or a straight Jolteon deck is likely just going to end up being better than Dragapult Jolteon. Again, these low potential decks, can they get wins against competitive decks? Absolutely. They function, they have a strategy, they're doing something. I just don't see them as having the likelihood of winning or cutting or performing well at events as these higher potential decks do. Next, we have Jolteon VMAX Inteleon. Jolteon VMAX is a card that, like I said, I really do like this card. Even though it only does have 1 attack, Max Thunderclap is, it's really cool, and it pairs well with Cheryl, and because of its elemental badge, you can attack for just 1 energy and go 100, and then you get hit and you Cheryl that damage off, and you do 100 again, and you just try to do that until you knock out 2 VMAXs or a VMAX and a V, and then clean up a V with your next Jolteon VMAX if the first one gets knocked out. So I think this deck is really cool. I think probably just wait until post rotation when other decks either fade out of existence with the rotation or other decks get weaker, because Jolteon VMAX really doesn't lose much of anything. Maybe it loses weakness guard energy, but everything loses that. So Jolteon VMAX is one of those decks where I think it's fine. It functions. Yeah, maybe some people might day 2 with it in the POG 2021 format, but I think its real chance is going to be after rotation when other decks lose some things as well. Leafeon VMAX Galarian Moltres. I'm a big fan of Leafeon V and VMAX, but personally I don't think this is the way to go with it, just because I think the Inteleon line, securing the consistency of the deck, securing your game plan is more important than having that secondary attacker. You already have energy acceleration with Leafeon V, so I don't think you need Galarian Moltres. I'm also a big fan of Galarian Moltres V as well, and I love seeing it splashed into decks. I just don't really think this is the deck to do that in. Leafeon VMAX Glaceon. really just think this is a cute deck pairing the two Diamond and Pearl evolutions together. I really think that's just it. I don't think they complement each other well. I think you're clunking up your deck with two energy types and two Pokemon that aren't really achieving similar goals. Now, Glaceon VMAX, of course, does work as a shield or a wall or a tank or whatever it is that you want to call it against VMAX Pokemon. And Leafeon VMAX is a little bit more aggressive, but in Glaceon VMAX pre-rotation, you'd probably just want to play Chaotic Swell. But even that, I don't think Glaceon VMAX is very strong. And yeah, so I think this is just making a worse Leafeon VMAX deck. Leafeon VMAX Inteleon would probably be the Leafeon VMAX deck that I would start out with for this format, but kind of like I was saying with Jolteon, but to a much stronger extent. Leafeon VMAX, I don't think we need to be in a rush to play this for the POG 2021 format because rotation happens on September 10th, and the deck just gets so much better when Chaotic Swell leaves, so your Galar Mines can just get popped right into play. And also other decks just lose things. You know, fire decks lose Welder, so that's huge for Leafeon. Other older decks like Luke Metal that can be a problem for Leafeon, and ADP that's just an aggressive force, those are gone with rotation. So this is another deck that I think just wait until rotation happens, because Leafeon VMAX is just kind of stronger because of the absence of other strong cards. Leafeon VMAX Victini. I see the point here. You know, Victini will hit other Leafeons for weakness. If your opponent's playing a water deck, you don't have to use Victini. You can just use Leafeon VMAX. But I do think it has functionality. I think it can work, of course, win some games, but this is not the build I would do for Leafeon or for Victini. Kind of back like Dragapult, Jolteon. I don't think these cards need to be combined. I don't think they're optimal together. Leafeon just wants to be consistent and get Galar Mine out and do your max damage with your 2 energy attack. Rinse and repeat, set up 2 Leafeons, rotate between them because you get that extra boost of energy acceleration on turn 1. So I would play Leafeon or Victini, but probably not both. And last for Leafeon decks, we have Leafeon VMAX with Whimsicott. The Whimsicott is the one that, upon evolving from Cottony, you can search your deck for any one card. So this is kind of like Leafeon VMAX with Inteleon. I couldn't really find a good reason to not just rate this mid-potential as well, since I rated Leafeon and Inteleon mid-potential. You know, Whimsicott searches for any card. Drizzle searches for a trainer, but then can evolve into Inteleon, but takes up more deck space. This one runs the Scoop Up Net Engine, so you're also running Mewtwo to get supporters back. It seems pretty okay, so I slapped mid-potential on this one. Next, we have Rayquaza VMAX with Boltund V. Rayquaza VMAX is a card that I'm sure a lot of people are excited to get or play with, whether it's collecting or putting it in your deck. It's a card that is getting a lot of hype. And I do think it is very strong. You know, inherently it has all the makings of a strong card. Solid HP, no weakness, which is really good. An ability that draws cards so it's self-sustaining, and max burst does a whole ton of damage. I don't think this is the way to build it though. Rose is a very good card for Ray, since you can dump your hand, attach energy, then Blue Sky Surge redraws you a hand. But I think you need a little bit of something else, and this format has 2 other options to offer for Rayquaza VMAX for other energy acceleration that we'll look at next. Rayquaza VMAX Flaffy. I do think Rayquaza VMAX Flaffy is pretty good because it has Mew in this format with Bench Barrier, whereas in post-rotation it does not. And juxtaposed with that, because I've been testing post-rotation, it does seem strong to me, and I'm giving it mid-potential. I do think this is a strong deck, but you do have to set up 2 stage 1s. You have to set up that Flaffy, essentially, for your Rayquaza to function at full capacity. And I'm giving this mid-potential, and it might just be because I think this Rayquaza VMAX Victini deck is better than it, so maybe they both have high potential, but I do think this Rayquaza VMAX Victini deck is likely going to be the way to go if you're playing Rayquaza VMAX in this format. And it's because this deck can have multiple modes, not only Victini VMAX or Rayquaza mode, but it can also have going first or going second. Going first, if you're forced to, and your opponent wants to go second, or you win and you don't want your opponent to go first, so you choose first, that's fine, because Victini, bench Victini, attach, pass, next turn evolve, attach, boss, and you're playing the Victini game plan. You know, you're disrupting your opponent by taking out the first V Pokemon they benched and attached to because you went turn 1 with Victini. Or if you go second, that's great too, because you can use Volcanion's Flare Starter to get energy onto Ray. You can Welder energy onto Ray and just get a Ray with a ton of energy set up, and that energy can last for a couple turns even of max bursting. So I really like that the deck seems consistent because of Rayquaza's Blue Sky Surge. It has a lot of options for energy acceleration between Victini V, Volcanion, Rose, and Welder. And it can have a turn 1 mode that is actually working optimally going turn 1, or go second and work a different way optimally, which not many decks can say that they can do. So I think that altogether it has a lot of good qualities. Next, we've got Regidrago. Regidrago paired with Cherim that can attach as many grass energy as you like to your non-rule box Pokemon. And then also Gossifleur, which is basically a Professor's Letter. Once a turn, you can search your deck for 2 basic energy. Regidrago is a very strong single prize Pokemon. Dragon Energy for Grass, Fire does 240 damage, and Cherim can help you get there repeatedly so you can chain Regidragos turn after turn. So all you have to do is make sure this deck works consistently, and Regidrago is going to churn 240s out and theoretically out-trade any rule box Pokemon that it's up against. The reason why this isn't just insane is because it does have many moving pieces. You have to find a fire energy for it each turn, but the fire energy can't be accelerated with Cherim, so you have to accelerate the grass energies and attach the fire for turn. You have to have the Cherim on board. You have to get your Regidrago each turn because it only has 130 damage, so it's most likely getting knocked out every turn. You might need to establish the Gossifleur as well, or the Eldegoss. I think I called Eldegoss Gossifleur earlier, but you have to try to establish the Eldegoss as well to actually search out those energies. And then you have to protect your bench from things like Inteleon Quick Shooting, Rapid Strike Urshifu, Jolteon, whatever it may be. So get out your Mew. Maybe the Mew gets knocked out, you have to Ordinary Rod it back in. So there's maintenance that is kept up with every turn, or needs to be kept up with every turn when you're playing a single prize deck as compared to playing a rule box deck, because rule boxes stay on the board longer and they need less copies of the actual Pokemon in their deck because they stay on the board longer. They typically need less setup and there's less things to do each turn. There's less turn by turn maintenance to do to keep your deck running with rule box decks. So Regidrago on paper, if you take away all of that maintenance and resource and everything, it seems like it's absolutely nuts. But I have to just give it mid potential because you still do need all of that keep up each turn, and you have to do it consistently. And sometimes it's not your fault if you don't do it consistently. It's just the nature of card games that at some point this deck might fizzle out and your opponent's rule box Pokemon is still on the board because they put it down there turn 2 and you didn't get your second Regidrago, and now they just have too much energy on the board and too many evolutions on the board and you can't take them down in enough time. Next, we've got Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX Inteleon. Now this one I was very hesitant to actually put on this list because it's not a new deck, but I just wanted people to know about Medicham V if they don't already. That's really the big one. Also Raihan, which is a new supporter card. It allows you, if one of your Pokemon were knocked out last turn, you can accelerate a basic energy from discard to one of your Pokemon, then search your deck for any card. Of course, Karate Belt is still in format, so you might not need Raihan with Karate Belt. But Medicham has the Yoga Loop attack, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by this attack at the end of your turn, you can take another turn. And then this attack can't be used if any of your Pokemon used Yoga Loop during your last turn. So this is a very, very strong effect if you can make it work. I think Medicham V gives a nice little boost to Urshifu, and I only say a nice little boost because Urshifu was already incredibly strong. So Urshifu VMAX Inteleon is not a new deck, but it does gain Medicham and the potential of adding Raihan as well. So I just wanted to put it out here because I think it's one of, if not the deck to look out for going into this tournament. Single Strike Urshifu VMAX with Umbreon VMAX. I've tested something very similar to this for post rotation. I think it has potential, but again, I think it's a deck that can just wait until post rotation. I don't think there's a rush to go into this because other decks lose things going into rotation, or other decks just completely stop existing with the rotation of standard format. And Umbreon VMAX, the whole deck is still here in post-rotation format. So I think it's pretty solid. You know, it's a strong card. The card is just absolutely great. And Single Strike Urshifu is okay because it can one-shot things, but takes a lot to get there. So I think this is an okay deck, but definitely not one of my top choices going into testing for POG 2021. Next, we've got Suicune V Altaria. I think this deck is incredibly fun looking and also very creative and just a breath of fresh air to the VMAX era that we've had for the past year or so, or I should say the VMAX / tag team era that we've had. But this uses the new Altaria, which searches for a supporter card and puts it on top of your deck, because Suicune can just draw that supporter card that you put on top of your deck. And this uses kind of a control package with multiple reset stamps and Jesse and James. Jesse and James, of course, your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand and you discard 2 cards from your hand. This also intuitively uses Cricketune V to just draw back up following that Jesse and James, which I think is really cool. And Suicune V is a good attacker, so you can just disrupt your opponent with Stamp Jesse James, maybe even Path to the Peak as well, and then just beat them down with Blizzard Rondo. So I really, really like this deck. It's a shame that we lose Reset Stamp Surge Jesse James with rotation right when we got something that would be really fun to play it with, but we can play it for this format while it lasts. So definitely a deck that I'm looking forward to playing with on PTCGO when Evolving Skies drops next week. Suicune V Moltres. I like both of these cards a lot. Moltres is just nice to splash into decks, and we're still using the Altaria engine here for this Suicune Moltres deck. Of course, playing some energy switches so you can just accelerate to Galarian Moltres and then over to Suicune. Or even if you have energy on Suicune already, you could switch it over to Moltres so you can attack with Moltres. So you cover 2 weaknesses. You have 2 really efficient 2 prize attackers to put out a decent amount of damage. One draws cards, the other accelerates energy to itself. So they're just 2 really good cards slapped together into a deck to cover 2 weaknesses. I think it's a nice little kind of tempo-ish kind of deck. Next, we have Suicune V Ice Rider. Now, the reason I'm not calling this Ice Rider Suicune V is because this is more Suicune V based. It just has a 2/2 line of the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX and then 3 Suicune V. I have not tested something like this, so I don't know if it actually has merit over regular Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. But in theory, you can lead with Suicune V. You can also attack with it going second on your first turn. You can just be a little more aggressive in different ways that you can't be with Ice Rider. And also you can just lead with this and then go into an Ice Rider, then go into another Ice Rider and force your opponent down to 1 prize card, stamp them, and then make them try to go through another VMAX. So I'm not sure if there's a reason to play 3 Suicune and only a 2/2 Ice Rider. Maybe just because you never need more than like 1 to 2 Ice Riders for this kind of strategy. I give it mid potential because Ice Rider, Suicune, Inteleon, Melanie are all very powerful cards, so it can't be that bad, but I'm also not convinced that it's better than just regular Ice Rider with a Suicune or 2 tossed into it. Next, we've got Suicune V Inteleon, not much different than the last deck. All of these Suicune V decks are getting mid potential across the board for me. This kind of just looks like a Zacian Inteleon deck, but it's Suicune Inteleon instead. And the pluses are that this can run Melanie and Capacious Bucket and Capture Energy, and it only attacks for 2 energy instead of 3. While Zacian is Zacian, and Zacian's a very strong card as well, but this deck looks like it's not too bad. It looks pretty good, so I wouldn't say it's a bad choice at all, but it's also, again, not one of my top choices going into preparing for this event. And last for the Suicune decks is Suicune V Ludicolo, and Ludicolo just seems like a meme. Like, this is a card that if it could work consistently and just beat down VMAX decks, it's a card that they wouldn't have printed. It's a stage 2, and on the turn it evolves, your basic Pokemon do 100 more damage. And the problem here is, even if Suicune V, even if you have a full bench and your opponent has a full bench, and you used Energetic Dance this turn, Blizzard Rondo is still only doing 320, and that might not even knock out what your opponent has active. And if your opponent has 4 Pokemon on their bench, you're doing 300, and you're not knocking out most VMAXs in one hit. So it just feels very unnecessary to play all of these slots in the decks. 9 slots of the deck to the Ludicolo line and an extra 3 to Rare Candy. I really don't love it. I mean, if you're getting double Ludicolo off in one turn and you're able to do plus 200 and just pop a VMAX out of nowhere, then that sounds great, but it doesn't sound very realistic to me. Next, we have Sylveon VMAX, just kind of a straight Sylveon VMAX build, of course, with that 1/1 Blaziken VMAX tossed in. You could put anything in there. You could put the Blaziken, you know, Zeraora, RS Urshifu VMAX, whatever kind of Rapid Strike partner you want in that spot, but it really is just a straight Sylveon deck. Sylveon V's ability lets you search for an item card, then end your turn, and Sylveon VMAX does 70 plus 30 more for each different type on your bench, and notably in this format it can use triple acceleration energy, which this list plays 4 of. It also plays 4 of the ribbon badge for Sylveon, which makes it worth only 2 prizes instead of 3, which is very interesting. Next, we have Sylveon Urshifu Moltres. This is a deck that I've tested quite a bit for post-rotation. It kind of tries to cover a lot of different weaknesses. It covers Psychic weakness with Sylveon, Fighting weakness with Urshi, and Dark with Galarian Moltres V. 3 of arguably the most important weaknesses to hit for, but it does make it a little less consistent than some other decks like it, like maybe Urshifu Moltres and then Sylveon Urshifu. Then you just toss them all together. You get on paper better matchups, but in practice a little less of a consistent deck. Then we have Sylveon VMAX Welder, and this one's interesting to me. It's hitting for Psychic weakness, Fire weakness, Fighting weakness, and Dark weakness. So it's just like the last one, except also toss in Fire weakness. How consistent is it, of course, is the question. If this deck can function consistently, then it actually looks pretty darn good, but it doesn't look like it will be that consistent. So I'm putting it at mid potential because I do think it on paper looks like it should be able to beat a ton of things, but it's a welder deck with 3 different VMAX lines in it, so it probably can't work consistently that well. We've got Umbreon VMAX Welder here, and I'm giving this high potential. This is a deck that I think actually has a lot of potential going into the POG 2021 format. Like I said, Umbreon VMAX is just an incredible card, and then you pair it with Welder to accelerate energy, and just a lot of different types to hit for weakness. Again, just trying to cover all these weaknesses, and then you have Mewtwo hitting the Urshifu weakness. You have Horror House GX at your disposal, Mawile GX at your disposal, the Victini line. Just a lot of good cards thrown into one deck, which is something that happens a lot of the time in these kind of cumulative formats right before the rotation when we have the largest card pool that we will have. There's just so many good cards to choose from that a lot of them get squished into the same decks. Zacian V Altaria. Just like Suicune Altaria, except full aggressiveness. This is kind of like speed Zacian lists of the past, or even the post-rotation Inteleon lists that you may have seen going around. But this uses Altaria instead to fetch the supporter you need, whether that's Raihan or Boss or Research or Mari in that scenario, and then draw them off the top with Aranguru's Primate Wisdom. And lastly, we have Zacian V Ludicolo, and basically the same thing I said about Suicune V, except Zacian's always hitting 230, so Ludicolo helps it to always hit 330 after you've evolved that Ludicolo. But getting down a stage 2 line to just do 100 damage extra that turn, if you look at the deck, it means they're not playing Inteleon, they're not playing Altaria, they're not playing Cinccino, they're not playing any draw support there because they're playing this Ludicolo instead. So you might actually just be missing attacks and trying to make up for them with Ludicolo's extra damage by the end of it all. So this is like meme tier to me. So I've organized all the decks that we looked at here today and put them in where I rated them based on high potential, mid potential, and low potential, just in case you wanted a wrap-up kind of look at it all. These are all the decks we talked about, and that's where I rated them for today. So thank you so much for watching, and I do hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for daily Pokemon TCG content if you have not already, and check out my sponsors, PotownStore.com and PokemonCard.io. Thanks so much for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.